g'day. How you going? What do you know? Don't strike a light. G'day, g'day. And how you going? Just say g'day, 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 and you'll be right.
Welcome to the Midweek End Times News and Trends Briefing as we share major events and what is happening around the world as it relates to Bible prophecy. Today's date is Wednesday, September 6, 2017. Hope you're all doing great and having a blessed week. Several interesting news items that have been popping up. In the Middle East, the Israeli forces shutter Ramallah printing producing materials inciting terror. This came out of the Ynet News, where the police chief and the Shin Bet forces shuttered a printer in Ramallah overnight on Monday, which produces materials used to incite to terrorism, said the IDF spokesman's office said Tuesday morning. In addition, the forces seized in Hebron tens of thousands of shekels from Hamas meant to fund terror activity. This is always going to be an ongoing issue there in Ramallah with the PLO, Hamas, and Hezbollah. And there's never going to be peace in that region because of their hatred toward Israel and toward the Jewish people. Also, on another issue in dealing with the Middle East, according to the Jerusalem Post, it's time for UNIFIL to confront Hezbollah. The article talks about how it says not every day that there's good news to report from the United Nations. Last week we got some good news, though, as the United Nations Security Council vetoed a significantly strengthened its effort to stop Hezbollah terrorists in southern Lebanon. The clouds of war have been gathering right under the nose of the UN peacekeeping forces. At the direction of the Iranian patron, Hezbollah has a mixed arsenal of weapons and battle-hardened fighters in southern Lebanon. So this will continue to be an issue because of Iran wanting to wipe Israel off the face of the map, and they're going to use Hezbollah to help with that goal in mind, which we know is never going to happen because God's hand is upon Israel. But you see how Iran continues to help fund and support the weaponry of Hezbollah, and it needs to stop, and the United Nations needs to put things in place. Anyways, on another issue of wars and rumors of wars, as Matthew 24 talks about, and the continued development of what's happening in North Korea. This report out of the Jerusalem Post, nuclear aspirations, or inspirations, I should say, has North Korea emboldened Iran. And we mentioned several weeks ago that the number 2 guy in his economic and military offices were there in Iran for about 10 days or so. But you see the relationship that North Korea and Iran have with each other. So, of course, there's inspiration from them to work together to develop the nuclear wars. Anyways, the article talks about how Israel is worried about the impact of the unchecked rogue nuclear state that could have on Iran's own military ambitions. Only a determined international response to North Korea will prevent other states from having it the same way, Israel's foreign ministry said. Iran is watching the North Korean crisis very carefully. We have to take into consideration that the way that this crisis will end will affect the Iran policy. So it is an interesting development across the board with North Korea and what would happen with Iran, and they'll take a playbook from what they are doing because the international community, if they don't do anything about North Korea, Iran can do the same thing that North Korea is doing. On another issue of North Korea, nuclear crisis, according to the BBC.com, says that Putin calls sanctions useless. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said pursuing further sanctions against North Korea is useless, saying they'd rather eat grass than give up their nuclear program. The U.S. said on Monday that it would table a new UN resolution on tougher sanctions in the wake of the latest test of a nuclear bomb by the North Koreans on Sunday. Putin also said that the ramping up of military hysteria would lead to global catastrophe, and it would, with a nuclear option and everyone going to war would be a disaster, no matter what country is involved, whether it's South Korea, North Korea, Japan, China, the U.S., Australia, you name it, all the people around the region would be impacted by this. The world would be impacted by a nuclear war. Hopefully it never happens, but this is something that Kim Jong is wanting to push right now, so he needs to be stopped before it gets too late. On another issue, also in dealing with North Korea, we mentioned this many months ago about an electromagnetic pulse that could happen, that North Korea could launch a threat to many different countries. I know specifically they're wanting to attack the U.S., but there's an article that came out of the Australian website the other day that talks about North Korea's threat against the U.S. now include a tactic long discussed by some expert as a electromagnetic pulse, or an EMP, triggered by a nuclear weapon that could aim to shut down the U.S. electric grid. And this could happen to any country, that sort of impact. And that is one of the disasters that would happen and affect millions and so many people around the world, is having that happen. And this sort of discussion about the EMPs, even back in the early 90s and 80s, probably this discussion was going on about having that sort of impact that could happen and bring down the electric grid upon a major city. And then there's another potential disaster, switching subjects to another hurricane that's creeping up the coast of the U.S. called Hurricane Irma. And they said that the strength's extremely dangerous. It's up to a Category 5 right now. So it's on the Eastern Caribbean, which is in lockdown mode at the moment. And again, Hurricane Harvey caused so much damage in the Houston area. This is another potential damage that could affect the coast of Florida and the Caribbean. And then lastly, next week, supposedly, if it does go out, and again, it's in the court system right now, according to the BBC website, and many Australian newspapers carry the same article talking about Australian court hears challenges to same-sex marriage vote. The High Court here in Australia began hearing legal challenges against the national vote on same-sex marriage. The government plans to hold a non-binding postal survey going out next week. I think it's on September 12th is when they're talking about it, that gauge the support of the changing Australia's law to allow same-sex marriage. This particular vote is going to cost over $122 million. And again, it's unnecessary to have this sort of, it's not an urgent matter to be discussed. This could be put in the next election, but they're going to spend, if that goes through and the court system approves of it, $122 million of taxpayer money just to make this one vote on this sort of issue. And like we said, this is probably something that could have been taken care of or will take care of in the next election cycle, since everyone's going to be compulsory to vote anyway. Why not make it as part of the election there? But it is not an urgent issue. This isn't one of those things that you need to spend that many millions of dollars for this to happen. Anyways, it's one of those hot topics and huge debate here in Australia, like it is in many other countries around the world. And but how man is trying to change the laws, and how the country, no matter what they try to do, you're not going to change God's laws or get God's approval on this subject of same-sex marriage. It's always between a man and a woman. That's the biblical view and God's view of marriage. This will be like what's happened in many other countries. It's the point of no return for that country if this goes through. Because like we said before, it opens the floodgates to more immorality, more pedophilia, incest, and everything that is sick and perverted under the sun. And it will also start the persecution to a whole nother level for those who don't agree with it, whether you're a Christian or not, in their lifestyle. Where we've seen this taking place, especially in the states that I know of, where bakers and flower shop owners are being sued or fined, or they end up having to close up shop because of the fines that they're impacted, or going to courts and being sued over all this. There should be a clause then, if this stuff is passed, that you're not going to get fined or sued or harassed by people who don't agree with it. And so this is one of those turning points, like we said, upon a country, upon a nation, upon the society, if this continues. So something we need to be aware of, informed of, and so we need to make our voices heard around the world. That God does not approve of this. There should be other means by, if these people are looking for certain benefits, or I know one of the arguments is that some of the same-sex partners in a hospital can't have someone visit them unless they're family or a spouse or anything like that. Then change the hospital policy. Don't change the laws to support the same-sex marriage. Anyways, that's a whole nother side thought there. But this is one of those big debates that's going on here in Australia and in the next week or so, whether we vote or not. Well, that concludes today's update. Until next time, God bless.